Breaking news today: as tensions in Gaza rise, Putin plans to contact Israeli and Arab leaders. In light of Russian concerns that Israel's offensive in Gaza could spark wider conflict in the region, President Putin is expected to call Israeli and Arab leaders on Monday, according to his advisor. Russia's long-standing relationship with Israel has been strained, and its relations with Iran, which supports the militant group Hamas, have become complicated as a result of the conflict. The president has already spoken to the presidents of Syria and Iran, Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov was quoted as saying by the Interfax news agency. During the day there will be more phone calls with the presidents of Egypt, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, as well as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said Ushakov, since Israel was getting ready to launch a ground offensive aimed at killing Hamas leaders. Concerns for the Palestinians trapped in the heavily bombed Gaza enclave have increased. A day after waves of its fighters broke through Gaza's heavily militarized border and killed over 1,400 people, most of them civilians, Israel declared war on the Palestinian Islamist group. Fears of a wider conflict that could draw in other countries have been stoked by Iran, a supporter of Hamas, threatening retaliation for any invasion of Gaza. Moscow has been fighting its own offensive in Ukraine for nearly 20 months, during which time it has repeatedly called for a ceasefire and offered to mediate. Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, has been trying to broker a truce between Israel and Hamas. He has had conversations with key players like Iran, Syria, Egypt, and Israel, stressing the importance of an immediate ceasefire and a political settlement. Humanitarian aid to Gaza was a central topic of Putin's talks with Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. On Monday, Russian President Vladimir Putin waded into the tense diplomatic situation between Israel and Hamas by contacting 5 major players, including Iran and leading Arab powers, in an effort to broker a ceasefire. Russia has said on multiple occasions that the United States and the West have ignored the need for an independent Palestinian state within the borders of 1967, despite the fact that it has relationships with Iran, Hamas, major Arab powers, the Palestinians, and Israel. According to the Kremlin, Putin had phone conversations with both Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. It was also stated that he would be speaking with Abbas and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in addition to Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. We believe that the main thing right now in this situation is to immediately cease the fire and begin the process of a political settlement, Yuri Ushakov, an advisor on foreign policy to the Kremlin, was quoted as saying by state news outlets. It's time to take active, sharp steps to stop this unprecedented escalation in the Middle East conflict, Ushakov said. The phone call's outcomes were ambiguous. TASS reports that Putin and Assad are eager to see humanitarian aid sent to the Gaza Strip. This week, Putin will travel to China to meet with Xi Jinping in an effort to strengthen the alliance between the two countries that pose the greatest strategic challenge to the United States. According to Putin, the current violence in the Middle East demonstrates how far U.S. policy has failed in the region and is part of the West's plan to cleave Russia apart by supporting Ukraine. Russia has voiced similar concerns, saying that things could quickly turn into a regional war if current trends continue. The lack of justice for the Palestinians has been identified by permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, Russia and China, as the root cause of the conflict. Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza Strip in the 1967 Six-Day War. The Palestinians seek to establish a state there, with East Jerusalem as its capital. On Monday, China's foreign minister met with his Russian counterpart and suggested that major world powers should work to prevent a humanitarian disaster by calling for a ceasefire to end the bloodshed in Israel. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met with his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, in Beijing to talk about the conflict between Israel and Hamas before Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to China. According to a Chinese transcript of the meeting, Wang told Lavrov, the United Nations Security Council must take action, and the major powers should play an active role. To avoid a further humanitarian catastrophe, it is crucial that hostilities be halted, that the warring parties be brought back to the negotiating table, and that an emergency humanitarian channel be set up.